Hi, it's Tabletop Templar back for another video, and today I wanted to start a new series, a spotlight series on various board games that I have in my collection, and just talk for a little bit about them. And I'm going to start right off with the classic 1970s, 1776 by Avalon Hill, the game of the American Revolution. There's a little bit of wear on this one. It's a used copy that I purchased, and this is, I think, one of the first, if not the first, bookcase game. Before Avalon Hill was doing the very long, kind of thin games. I think they made like a World War I, 1914. Gettysburg, those kinds of games. This was the first of the kind of more compact bookcase games, and it was a really good one. And I want to show some of the components, take a look at it, and talk just a little bit about the game and why it's in my collection and why I enjoy it. So I'll open up the game a little bit. There's the rule book. I have the second edition rules. Very, very colorful, very red. But it's a very good rule book. I love the designer's notes on this. It really talks about, the revolution, about the war, and so if you're a fan of history and you want to take a look at this, I recommend this game. It really does. Even refers to this as a simulation. It really tries to make this a simulation. It's not terribly long. The rule book on this one is only 31 pages, and there's some questions. There's also the general, which had some more stuff. So it's a very, very good game. It's very simple. I think one of the takeaways of this game, if I can explain this real quick, is if you're looking for an introductory hex-based CTR combat resolution table type game, this is probably the best way to get into that. These kind of classic games from the 80s, 70s, and 80s that might be intimidating and definitely very rules heavy for some games. This is probably the best introductory game to get into that kind of system. Very simple. It's not complicated. And I think that this is probably the best way to get into it. Terrain effects chart for movement. In this game, terrain does not affect combat. Unlike a game that I've been playing, War and Peace, it doesn't affect combat. Although you could, and I have played a variant of this, of my own kind of creation, where it kind of combines some War and Peace rules into this, where it does affect combat. It has an advanced game chart. The odds go to 5 to 1. And then it uses these cards I'll show you in a minute. And it does have a basic game system where it will be it will eliminate basically a whole army usually, or half. It doesn't eliminate one or two. It just does half, or no combat, or eliminates the entire attacker or defender. And then some basic naval combat and a forced march table. Very simple. If you're a fan of War and Peace or familiar with that game, this will probably seem even simpler than that, which War and Peace I would say is a very good introductory game to that system. But I would say this is even more simple. And there are 4 scenarios: Invasion of Canada, you have the Saratoga Campaign, Turning Point in the War, you have Green Southern Campaign, and you have the Virginia Yorktown Campaign. Not terribly long. This one's only 5 turns. This is a very simple scenario. I did this the other day. This is 7 turns. This is a very basic one. They do have a basic game to learn the game. It's a very simple. I recommend playing it if you've never played this kind of game before. This is kind of designed to be the one you play after that. I think you're supposed to kind of play in order, although I don't think it specifically says that. But this is a good way to kind of learn about how to use supply and artillery and some of these other things, forts. This is a very basic and simple scenario. I recommend doing this one as well. In fact, if you want to skip the basic scenario and you just kind of want to learn the particulars of this game, while it might not be the most fun scenario to do, this would be a good one to start just to learn the game. And they have a campaign which fights the whole war. And so this is the reinforcement chart, and it shows the order that they'll come in. And then this is their initial deployments at the start. Yeah, this is a little bit of a used copy, so I don't really take care of my games, but I bought this secondhand for a very good price, so you get what you pay for. So the counters are very basic, they're very simple, they're very bright. I guess a product of the 70s. So these are, this right here is a supply counter, entrenchment. This is the fort, doubles your defense, some fleets, so some naval combat, but it's pretty one-sided, obviously. Although the French do help British infantry. These are the British, by the way. These kind of pink color. That's the British. Here's the Continentals, Continental infantry. They're blue. Here's the French for when they arrive. There's some navies in here too. I'll get to these in a minute. These are the Tory militia. There's also dragoons, cavalry. They get 13 movement, and there's the NATO symbol. And then there's infantry in here as well, and Indians. There's Indians in here as well. There's one. So you can see it with the eye. Indians. So Native Americans are represented in this game. Here's some forts and supply for Continentals. So they are represented, and they don't have a huge force, but it does add some extra flavor, historical flavor. And these are the rebel militia units, and they get dragoons as well. If you want to build the cavalry. Cavalry isn't a big factor in this game. And I'll show these real quick. So this is sort of a unique part of the game. You have these tactical cards that you each have a set 1 through 8, and you'll each pick a card, refuse the left, and then you'll do, well, withdraw if you want to try to withdraw, but let's see, stand and defend. You'll consult the chart and you'll see what you want to do. So it's not a bad game. When I play solo, I pretty much play this solo. I don't use these. I'll just roll on the chart. And then if I want to use some of the War and Peace rules, I might add the combat modifiers for the terrain, but just depends what I feel like playing. So this is the board, and it covers a pretty wide range for the Revolution. This is the northern half. I was doing the Canadian campaign earlier, so I was playing with these, and you can see there's Boston here, New York, Philadelphia. So not a bad game. And then just to show you, I won't set up the whole thing back to back, but other way. And this is the South. So you see here's Maryland, well, you have some Delaware here, then Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and then you have Georgia down here. So it covers all 13 colonies plus Canada. There's also off the board movement, where they can, you can go to Halifax in Canada. They also go to the West Indies. The French can go and attack. There were some raids. The Continental Army did raid the West Indies, which the British were completely unprepared for. And then you have off-board movement, the French supply, and this is probably the most unique part of the game here, are the how the recruitment goes. Depending on how many strategic cities that you control, depends on how much influence each side has and how much they can recruit. And all regions have this. There are 4 regions. There's Deep South, South Central, and then underneath there's New England, and then the middle states. And so, you can't just put everything in just one area. You have to really fight the whole war. Well, the British does, and the Continental Army. So it keeps a pretty historical situation for the game, and I do enjoy it. And so anyway, I want to wrap this up and just give my final thoughts on this game. I think it's a really good one. I think it holds up really well. I think it's a great introductory game for this kind of CTR hex-based game system. It's not card-based. You're not going to get any political or any event. This is not event-driven. This is purely military. Some people have said good things about the board. Some have said bad. My opinion is a little bit mixed. I would like to see a reprint of this and maybe tweak it a little bit. I know there is a 3rd edition of this unofficially on Board Game Geek. So if you want to play with those rules, feel free to. I don't have the general counters. I do want to get those and print them out and try to use those. I would probably suggest using those at least. You don't have to play the 3rd edition. I think the 2nd edition is more than capable, especially if you look at it as a very basic but fun game. It plays very simple, but you also get pretty realistic results in terms of the revolution. So I think when it says that it's a simulation game, I think that it does live up to that. And it really provides a pretty good simulation of the revolution from a really military point of view. So if that's what you're looking for, this isn't a GMT game where there's cards. If you want to just play the military aspect of the American Revolution, this is a pretty good option, and I definitely recommend it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.